And you are going to need that lightweight chipboard that I was telling you about, or you can use the front of a cover of a paper pad. And we are going to cut it down, and we need it to be 5.5 inches wide. Let's make sure this is right. 3.5 spine, 1 inch. And then by 10.5 is our cover size. Let me double check this, make sure I have it right. Okay, then we're going to take our scoreboard Okay, we're going to start scoring at 1 inch. And then we are going to score every 1/16 of an inch, so every little mark after the 1 inch until we get to 4.5 inches. So 1/16, 1/4, 5/8 I think it is, 1/2 inch, just every mark all the way to 4.5. And this is just going to have this to bend and curve for us. Three and 1/8, 3 1/4, 3 5, 3 1/2, and on we go. Until we get to, missed one. Alright, so score starting at 1 inch, then every little notch all the way to 4.5. And we're going to set this aside. And that's going to help for our paper to bend. And then for this 1 inch section in the front and this 1 inch section in the back is how we are going to attach it to our front and back cover. So I'm going to go ahead and fold that first section over, that 1 inch, and then the back 1 inch. Alright, and that makes our paper, it gives a good curve to it for our outer spine. So take your 2 chipboard pieces that are 10.5 by 10.5, and what we're going to do is we're going to glue it all the way that 1 inch section on the back and the front, and I'm going to, well, okay then, I'm going to use some double-sided tape. So I'm going to go all the way up to that first score line without going over. And then I'm also going to add some glue. There it is. To help reinforce it. So I'm going to put 3 pieces. Then we're going to flip over to the other side, same thing. I want to put my tape all the way up to that first score line, excuse me, without going over it. Okay, now that we have that done, alright, so set that aside for just a moment and grab your 2 chipboard pieces. And also get your batting and your scissors. I've got a big old roll of it. I'm trying to keep it together a little bit. Alright, so I am just going to roughly trace out. Let me try a pen. Oh, here's a marker. That'll probably work better. It's going to be completely covered up, so, and plus I'm just doing a rough cutout and I'll trim it down later. Just trying to make this a little bit easier because this roll of batting is really huge, as you can tell. Alright. Now I'm going to need 2 of these. So I'm going to get this one cut out. And then we will find a spot to cut another one. There we go. So I'm just going to trace around it again. There we are. Get rid of this. Okay. So grab your chipboard piece, and you can use any glue that you want. It does not have to be a lot of glue, just to hold that batting in place a little bit. So I'm just going to press this down. Just giving it a second to let that glue get a hold of it. Then I'm going to flip it over and trim all of this excess off. Alright, just edge a little bit more. Okay, now our next one. this batting does not have to be perfect. It's going to get covered up with the fabric. I'll cut around the edges. Okay, now we have both of those done. We're going to take our center piece, our outside spine, and begin attaching it. So I'm going to take off the tape on one side. And I'm also going to add some glue to mine. Okay, now for the side that you do not have the batting on, you want to bring your chipboard all the way to that first score line without going over. And of course, line it up top to bottom. This is going to be the inside of our album, so it's going to curl like this. So let's take the tape off on the next side. And I'm going to add some extra glue again. And then I'm going to put the chipboard all the way up to that first score line again. And keep it even top to bottom. Alright, so there is our spine. Now, on our finished album, we don't want this to be seen, so we're going to take a little fabric and wrap around the top and wrap around the bottom. So I've chosen this fabric. Put this out of the way. So we are going to cut a couple of strips and put it around that outer spine so you can't see it. You know, the more I thought about that, I'm just going to leave enough overhang to cover that part also, because we're putting the fabric all the way across. So let's go ahead and cut us a little piece of batting and put in this center part too. So I'm going to grab my big roll again, and I'm just going to cut out a section here and get it to fit. I'm going to piece it together. Let's put some glue down. Fill in that little empty space. There we are. There. Okay, I'm going to set this aside for just a moment and grab the fabric. Let's see if I can get enough room here. And of course we know 10.5 is our height. So let's see what we have here. So let's mark out where we want it. We have 10.5 inches high, and I want at least 1 inch of overhang for the top and the bottom. So we're going to mark out our fabric at 11.5 inches. I'm probably going to go off camera. This is kind of hard. Let me see if I can. Wrong way. Alright. So 11, you know what, let's just make it 12. We can always cut out the excess, and I'd rather have too much than not enough. Alright, so our line across the top. And then for the width, 12. Let's make it 27 inches wide, just to be on the safe side. That way, like, we can cut off the excess. So I'm just marking my edge, and then we're going to go ahead and cut this out. I buried my scissors somewhere. I'm sorry, I know I'm off camera, but I'm just cutting out my 12 by 27 fabric. Alright. I know I'm probably going to go off camera a lot. I'm going to try this the best I can. So we want our batting side down to the back of our fabric. Center it as much as you can, and it looks like mine is going to fit really well. Yes, that is going to fit well. Okay, let's get our Fabri-Tac, and we're going to start gluing it up. I'm going to start with the top edge. I'm going to start in the center here. And then work my way out. And we're just going to fold that over. Alright, now when we get to our corners, we're going to have this little overlap. So what we need to do is take your scissors. Let me zoom back in so y'all can see this better. Okay, so I'm going to cut this little overhang part out. So I'm going to go with the edge of the chipboard, cut it to the top. Hold on, make sure I'm doing it. Oh, and then cut it at an angle. Hold on, I'm sorry, I'm thinking for a little bit here. The best way. Yeah, let's do it like that. Just cut it towards the top, not at an angle. We're going to glue that down. Gonna put a little glue. This stuff's all over the place. Put that edge down. And then we're going to fold it over. So I'm going to add some glue down the side here. And then I'm going to take that edge, try and make it as neat as you possibly can. Alright, I've got too much fabric, so I'm going to cut this little tip off right here. There we go. I'm sorry, I completely did that off screen. What I did was I pulled that corner down and flipped it over, but I ended up having too much fabric, so I just trimmed it down like this at an angle and then pulled it over some more. We'll get to do it 3 more times here in a little bit. Got a little bit of a thread sticking out there. Wow, this glue. So I'm going to put some glue on there and stick them back down. And then pull the rest over. Okay, let's go to our other end. I'm going to take my scissors and cut the fabric alongside that chipboard. That way you'll have a little flap right here. I'm just going to test it, kind of dry fit it right now. Alright. We're going to glue this little extra piece down and then put glue down our edge here. Probably should have did the edges last. So we're going to pull it over. Try and make it as neat as you can. If you have excess fabric, just trim it off. Just need some more glue. I ended up with too much fabric, so I'm just going to cut it at a bit of an angle, just like this, and then pull it down. And I need a little bit more glue on my tip. He's kind of poking up a bit. Just try and take your time, work with it, and get those corners as clean as you can. And once we get that done, we're going to flip it over. Now we want to pull this taut, but not too tight. And I think first we're going to trim our corners out again. So I'm going to go along with the chipboard. I got my little flap here, and I'm just going to kind of dry fit, see how it's going to work. Yeah, that's going to work. So I'm going to cut this little flap off. That's going to work out great. And same thing for the other side. We're going to try and dry fit it. Yeah, I'm going to cut the flap off also on this one. These ends, somehow they ended up being a little bit smaller. Okay, so glue the top. And then we're going to start pulling it up and over. You want it tight, but not too tight that you distort the album. Need a little bit more glue on this side. your corners. Try and get it as neat as possible. I've got glue all over my fingers. I can't. If you know of a better glue than Fabri-Tac, please let me know. Of course, my Art Glitter Glue was doing pretty good, or really good, when we first started. I got a little bit of fold in my fabric, but you can't see it at the top. So I'm not going to worry about it. We're going to move to this end. We're going to start in the corner. Nice, more glue on this end. Got a little bit of bunch up of fabric here. I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. If you want to, you could take these little clamps and hold it on there, but don't leave it on too long because it'll make an impression on your other side with your batting. I think that's really the only one that I'm seem to be having trouble with. I got some excess fabric here. Trim that off. There we go. Now we have our fabric on. And this here, it's going to come out shaped correctly whenever we get the rest of our spine and everything in. I think that fabric's really pretty. Okay, well, next thing we are going to insert, well actually, we need to talk about the front of the album and the closure before we get any further with putting our inside in. Okay, so I have a mock-up of the front of the album, and nothing is glued down yet. I just wanted to get everything placed because we're going to do some stitching on this front, and we need to get our stitching before we can put anything on the inside of the front cover. And so like I said, I just placed everything. I know that what you have in your stash may not match what I have here. I can go through and tell you You know, I got some flowers from Michaels, but I may have had them for a year or so. They might not carry it anymore. So grab everything that you have in your stash. I did have some lace that I ordered online. I ordered my lace through China. AliExpress. I ordered a lot of lace through AliExpress, and this one is an elastic weight lace. So I have it running all the way around, and then we can also use that as a tie. I have a little Tim Holtz Live the Life You've Imagined. The key that says dreams on it. So I'm going to start taking the flowers off. Because what I'm going to be stitching down is, oh, I took a picture of it. I'm sorry. That's very important. Once you do the mock-up and you have everything that you want in place, go ahead and, there we are. I did take a snapshot of it. So get everything in place, take a picture of it before you move everything off. And then later we'll come back once we have the album finished so nothing gets in our way, and we'll finish putting in our flowers. But I want to stitch in, my glue didn't dry. This is the Maja Design Papers. I used one sheet, and I'll have all this on the PDF. Let's see. Enjoying Outdoors Beautiful Trees, which it looked like this. And this is on the other side. And I just took my frame and put it over one of these little plants, and I cut it out and taped it to the back. So I want to mainly get this paper down, and I did decide that this was too long for me, so I made a little mark here, and I want to cut that down real quick. Actually, I'm going to tear it because I'm going to distress all of the ends on these pages. So I'm going to take everything off, set that aside for the moment, and that's what's going to leave us with our lace. And you can choose how you want yours. I wanted to go ahead and tell you how long this one was. Alright, so it's about 48 inches long. So, like I said, we're going to stitch. So all your stitching is going to show on this inside cover, and we want to be able to conceal that. So I'm going to start with tacking this down with a little bit of glue. Now I have to get it like I had it before. I'm trying to center it the best I can on my album. So I am going to stitch this in place, so I'm just going to tack it, and tell you what, let's use double-sided tape. Just to hold that down until we get it stitch down. Try to make this as even all the way around as possible. I can't tear this tape. I don't know where my oh, there it is. All right. I'm not going to be able to fit all this in. I want to make sure that I have it the same amount overhanging on each side. So I'm just going to spread it out. And I'm sorry, I know y'all can't see it. Let's see. I have 9.5 inches of lace on that back. I have more. Let's see. $12 inches. Alright. So I'm going to start taking, we'll start from this end. Sorry, I'm just measuring my lace again. Alright, so I'm going to take the backing off my tape. I'm going to try to. Well, this is a first. I usually have no problem with. There we go. I'm trying to just measure, make sure I have it somewhat centered. Take our next piece of tape off. I've never had this much trouble before. Sorry, I may be getting my head in the way. There we go. Go ahead and take the rest of them off real quick. Oops. Alright, well maybe I should have just used glue. I think it's not working for me. Try this one. Yeah, I got that one. A little bit of glue right here. This glue dries clear. Okay. So that'll hold that in place till I get it to the sewing machine. And you don't want to stitch over that tape. Alright, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to distress the edges with my Prima Distress. Or Tim Holtz has a little smaller one too. This one was just a little bit more handy at the moment. I love these Maja design papers. They distress really well. I don't know, it's just, I guess the fibers and and I just kind of run my fingernails across the edges. One more. If it tears somewhat, that's okay too. And again, just run it under my fingernails. All right. This top a little bit more distressed. Now I'm going to stitch also all the way around here. So I'm going to put my glue in the center part. I'm going to go ahead and use my Messy Fabri-Tac glue. It'll take it a little time to dry while I try and adjust it. Oh, that might be prettier than the one I had chosen. Nah, I'm going to go with what I have. I do that a lot. I'm making albums, and it's so hard to choose which side of the paper to use, and I end up changing my mind. Alright, this one was... Look at my picture, because I can't remember. Okay, this one went on top. Okay, that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch these down, stitch through here to hold the lace, stitch this around, stitch my other two pieces, and then I'm also going to stitch around my album edge. I'm going to go all the way around, down the bottom, and then on the bottom I'm going to continue across the spine, all the way the back, up again, and then all the way around the top and meet in that corner. So you find what you want to use on your album, and I hope this has given you some type of inspiration. But I'm going to go to my sewing machine and get that done, and I will be back with y'all.